Have you ever filled a bike ride with a maple syrup? Personally, I haven't, but this is a question I received recently and I'm going to be answering today. Each week inside my Fuel membership, I answer questions about how to fuel on and off the bike. And today's question is, how much is 90 grams of maple syrup in one of those plastic flasks from Hammer? I've got a couple of these flasks. This one's 125 grams and 150 mils, sorry, and this one is 250 mils, but they've got different, I guess, plastic types and how soft they are, which is going to influence how easy it is to access when we try and use it as fuel on the bike. Now, as I said, I've never actually used maple syrup as a fuel source, mostly because of the price tag. So this cost me €8 here in Spain. But then if I go and look in the supermarket in Australia, for example, you might be able to buy a bottle, same sort of size, for anywhere from $5 to $10 per 250 mils, which means that you could be paying anywhere from $240 to nearly $4 per serve if you're using this as a fuel source. So I think something to be aware of, that even though it's natural, it might end up costing you a lot if you are going to use that as your primary source of energy on and off the bike. But I know a lot of people do. If you live in Canada and you live in America, then you might have a lot of easier access to maple syrup, and it's probably not going to cost you as much as it does here in Spain or in Australia and other parts in the world. Now, when I'm thinking about nutrition, we want to be looking at the food labels, and we can do that by looking at the back of the pack. So if I look at this particular one, it's saying that for 190 mils is 250 grams. So about that 90-gram serve that you're talking about is probably going to be about 70 mils in this bottle. So if I use this soft flask, it's probably going to be about between these two lines, more or less. We can weigh it as well if we have some scales. I don't have them on me at the moment. But if we look at the actual pack of the nutrition label of the food we're using, it's always going to be a little bit different. So this one says that per 100 grams, there is 67 grams of carbohydrate per 100 grams, which is going to be a little bit different depending on what food source. So again, we can go into our food tracker. I use Chronometer for my clients. Go into add food and let's search up maple syrup. What comes up? And so when we're looking at a food portion, we're going to be looking at, this is per gram. We can look at per 100 grams here. We can also look at per 90 grams. We can look at a particular serving size. So for example, a tablespoon, maybe not 90 tablespoons. Let's see what 1 tablespoon is. So for example, 1 tablespoon of maple syrup is going to be about 50 calories, and it's going to be 13 grams of carbohydrate. So if we're then comparing that to another food source, so like an energy gel, for example, if a standard energy gel has about 25-30 grams of carbs, more or less 2 tablespoons of maple syrup is going to provide the same amount of carbohydrate and energy as you would get. So if we go back to the grams, we can search here. We can add 90 grams of carbohydrate, 90 grams of maple syrup from an average source. As I said, my one here, it says that there's 67 grams. So it's going to be perhaps a little bit more carbs in this one versus the average one. But 90 grams of the maple syrup is going to be giving us about 60 grams of carbohydrate. So that might be a really great source of fuel if it's cheap and it's easy to access for you. Okay, but now what we want to think about is, how are we going to be storing that and transporting that on the bike? So obviously maple syrup typically comes in a glass bottle. It's not necessarily easy to carry and open. Chances are you're probably going to end up with a bit of a sticky mess. I'm hoping I'm not going to end up with a sticky mess here myself. I'm going to pick the 150 ml container that I have got, and I'm going to go and actually try this on a bike ride, whether I go indoors in Zwift or if I go outdoors, I'm not quite sure. But as I said, 70 mils of this is going to be providing approximately that 60 grams of carbohydrate. So I'm going to be looking between these two markers of 50 and 100 mils. Now, if I get my maple syrup, what does that actually look like? Obviously, with these particular flasks, they've got a pretty wide opening that makes it easy to access. And we're going to, actually, I want to make sure that I can see the side that I'm looking into. Pour it in. Hopefully don't spill it all over my office desk. That's 50 mils. That there is going to be about 70 mil of maple syrup. So if I turn that around, that's going to be my 60 grams of carbohydrate. So in this particular bottle, this could be 2 serves, or 60 could be 120 grams of carbohydrate per one of these gel flasks. So obviously you want to make sure I go and put the lid on nice and tight. I do not want that to be sort of spilling. Now with this particular one, then you can see it's very, very runny. these different flasks are great to test out. So I've got one that's really, really soft. That was just from Decathlon. I think actually I probably bought both of these from Decathlon, but they're the type of plastic, what it tastes like, and how easy the mouthpiece to open and close is going to depend. So typically what you have to do is you have to squeeze the lid with your teeth in order to get the liquid out of it. If you're putting something was a little bit, I know I was talking to someone yesterday about mashed potato, and they were putting mashed potato in one of these, but for that they have to actually physically take the lid off because it's going to get stuck in the mouthpiece. So if I'm going to go and use that on my bike ride, obviously stick it in my jersey, put it in my pocket, or if I'm doing an indoor bike ride, I just put it on the top of my bike so I can really easily access it. And when I want to use it, I'm going to squeeze it. 60 grams of carbs is what I would expect someone to be consuming on average for a moderate intensity or an endurance ride, maybe with a little bit of efforts in there. Could be a really good source if you like it, if it's tasty for you. Like all things, we have to test it in practice and see, is it realistic? Is it sustainable? For me, I probably wouldn't look at using this on a long-term basis personally, just because if it's going to cost me €8 or €5 every time I do that, that I find for a lot of people can put people off from using food sources, whether it's the gels or other products. So I probably wouldn't use it from the cost perspective, but I'm going to have to now go and try it on a bike ride to see what I think, if it agrees with my gut, and then feed back to you. So watch this space. I hope that helped answer your question about what 90 grams of maple syrup looks like in a soft flask. Sal, I look forward to seeing you inside the Fuel membership. That's all for today. Like, subscribe, fuel your ride, and I will see you next time.